I play a very, 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 very mean guy. He's not a nice guy. He's not lovable. Nobody will like me in the show, but they will love the show. And during the Golden Globes, Helen Mirren was nominated for it, and they played the clip at the awards ceremony of the three of us doing our thing. So to have been featured on the Golden Globes was like the highlight of my career.
The Tom Screen podcast is owned and made possible by Ethical Marketing Service. If your business is struggling with Google or Facebook ads, maybe you're frustrated figuring it out or there's a performance issue, Ethical Marketing Service has worked on hundreds of accounts and we can help in this area. We offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, and for every direct account we look after, we sponsor a child in a developing nation with food, water and education. If you would like to find out if we can help, it's a free, no salesy consultation call, and the link is in the description. Enjoy the episode. Thomas Green here with Ethical Marketing Service. On the episode today, we have Tyler Foley. Tyler, welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me, Thomas. It's a joy and a pleasure to be here.
It is also my pleasure. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. I am a father and a husband, a former child actor, performer. I am currently a consultant, both in safety and for public speaking. Ironically, the two are connected, and yet most people don't realize it. So I have been training people how to be more effective presenters and public speakers for the last 5 years, a safety consultant on my own for the last 10. And I'm also a lover of fine chocolate and a seeker of warm beaches.
I particularly like the bit at the end. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
In terms of where your story begins, in your view, where would you say that is?
Oh, I probably rate it 6. That's when I first discovered the joy and the love of performance. That's when I first started acting and performing. It's also the year that my father passed away. And so the two most significant sounds that I ever heard in my life were within 2 months of each other. The one being the sound of applause and the feeling of getting a standing ovation and making an audience laugh. And then literally 2 months almost to the day later, I heard my mom make this sound when an RCMP officer and our family physician came to the back door and told her that my father would never be coming home. And the two significantly impacted my life, because the one was a sound that I absolutely love and that I seek and that I have been seeking basically my entire life. And the other is a sound that I absolutely abhor and do not ever wish to hear again ever in my life. And a lot of the decisions that I've made have led to me avoiding that sound and that sound for others. There's, looking back in hindsight, there's a very obvious reason why I got into safety and why it is that I continue to help companies achieve greater success with their safety systems so that other people don't have to have the same misfortune that my mother did.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I always find, and I'm sorry to hear that you had to go through that at what is a young age. I always find it beneficial for others. When I talk to people on the podcast about hardship, if I ask, what if someone else is going through that right now, what advice would you give them?
That the impact of things like that are life altering and life changing. But it's something that there's always a lesson and there's always grace in it. I used to hate when people would say, well, look at on the bright side or look at the positive. I'm like, don't try to make me find a positive out of my father's passing. But there is grace in all things in life. And I think of the fact that although I didn't have my father growing up, in his absence, I had 10 surrogates who stepped in and became father figures, which I likely wouldn't have had had my father been around. And that profoundly impacted my life because I got to see very, very different viewpoints sometimes contrasting viewpoints within these gentlemen who I admired and who helped with my development. And so I would say to anybody who's going through something similar, don't try to question the logic of the universe in the moment, right? When you're in the eye of the storm, your only job is to survive. But once the winds have passed, and the destruction can be observed and the rebuild begins, that's when you can start to look around and say, this is why. So the key there is you might need to be in survival mode for a little bit, but eventually the rebuild will begin. And then you can look around and see why you needed to clear the first structure in order to build the second.
I appreciate you sharing that. And you never know who's listening and who you can help. So thank you. In terms of the first part of your answer about the applause, I'm thinking, I don't know why, but the first thing that comes up is when thinking of people who have said similar things, I don't know if it was in necessarily a positive light. So they're like, I'm drawn to the applause, and I'm not sure if that's a good thing for me. Have you ever thought about the positives and negatives of the applause?
Oh yeah, no. The positives are it's a wonderfully gratifying feeling. Like you can, there's an instant satisfaction that comes with it. The nice thing is if you're getting applause, or even better, if you get a standing ovation, that means that you connected with an audience, and that's, anywhere from dozens to thousands of people. And to have had an impact where they want to share the one gift that they can with you of applause is incredibly rewarding. And it means you did a really, really, really good job, and very likely had an impact on that audience. The downside to it is it's a very hard high to replicate, particularly over a period of social restrictions where people cannot gather in large groups. So if you're somebody whose only source of satisfaction or pride is through the validation of others, that would have been incredibly trying. Luckily for me, I'm not seeking the validation of a crowd, but I do appreciate the reward and the gift that is applause or a standing ovation or a laugh. Because it's an indication that I gave my best and was able to serve. And I think that's really one of those key components for me. I get my satisfaction out of knowing that I did my best, that I was of service to the public. And whether that comes in the form of applause or, a private aside, or even some testimonials, it's always good to hear that I was able to provide something of value to anyone. And so I can see where the downside would be if you need to have that feedback instantaneously, or if that is the only way that you can find validation in the performance, then it's going to be a very lonely time, because even a really good speaker is only speaking, if you've got a full circuit, you're doing an event a week for all 52 weeks of the year. That's only 52 standing ovations that you're going to receive. There's at least over 300 other days where you're going to be sitting going, why don't they love me? So, I can see where it would have its drawbacks. But for me, I'm doing it with or without the applause. The applause is kind of like, the Christmas bonus you get at the end of the year. You don't know if you're going to get it. You don't know how much it's going to be, but when you do get it, you're very grateful and thankful, and it takes you through to the next time.
And when did you come to that realization? Was it early, or did you have to learn that?
So it was early in my life, but late in my career, because remember, I started performing at 6 years old. And when I started in film and television, there's nobody to stand and cheer for your performance. And oftentimes you end up doing a performance 5, 10, 15, 20 times in front of the camera until the director's satisfied with the performance that he's captured. And he's usually, or she is very fixated on a monitor. And so they're not there to hold your hand. And you could be doing the greatest performance on the planet, and it maybe is your partner that they're not feeling, or somebody drops a hammer back on the sound stage, ruins the take, and you have to do it again. And so I rapidly learned that I needed to be happy with my performance, and ultimately that's all that mattered, because there's nobody to stand on a film set. There's nobody to stand up and give you this rousing ovation. And oftentimes the director won't tell you you did a good job until the premiere of the show. So, I had to find my own self-satisfaction with it. And, so I think that was a lesson that I learned in my late teens, early 20s, but 15 years into my career.
Is there anything comparable in life to the applause that you found?
Yeah, but this is a PG show, so I can't say it on air. But my wife knows what I'm talking about.
I wasn't expecting that answer. But yeah, you've got your first applause.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about you. You said you're a child actor, and for whatever reason, well, many reasons, I would assume, there are some negative connotations to that term these days as a result of perhaps knowing more about the experience of child actors. How was your experience?
Oh, it was wonderful, but I'm also not famous. So I think that helps. Right. And I got into acting of my own accord and continued acting because I wanted to. My mom never pushed me with it. She, and I had other pursuits too. So, I played basketball until I realized that a 5'8" guy probably wasn't going to continue playing basketball. I, for a while, actually thought I wanted to get into marine biology. I actually am still fascinated with marine biology. Absolutely love the ocean. I love that it is still the unexplored territory. We know more about the surface of the moon than we know about the depths of the ocean. And I think that to me is fascinating. So if I could, every once in a while you have somebody ask you, if you could do something else completely different, unrelated to the job that you do right now, what would you do? For me, marine biologist is very high up on that list. Again, so my mom, I remember her taking me to an information session that the University of British Columbia was holding in Alberta, which for anybody who doesn't know Canadian geography is quite odd, because the University of British Columbia is on the coast, and Alberta is very landlocked. And so for them to try and draw some of us prairie folk out to the coast to study oceanography was pretty interesting, actually. So, she took me to this information session when I was in the 10th grade and allowed me to look into it. And the funny thing is, the more I looked into it, the more I realized I wanted to keep acting. I ended up going out to Vancouver, which is where the University of British Columbia is located. I even applied to the school to get into the school, but ended up just acting. Like again, life happens for you, not to you, and the things unfold the way that they should. And I was rapidly sucked into film and TV, and I just stayed doing that. So yeah, no, I had a remarkable good time growing up performing. And again, where I grew up, it wasn't like it was LA or New York. It wasn't like I was doing a show a month or even a week. I wasn't out auditioning. My parents weren't reliant on my income. I was in a very, very small town with very limited access to vices that have varying moral and legal implications. So I, I was very, very lucky. It was a beautiful thing for me to be able to do. Very supportive too, and gave me a chance to be exposed to multiple different viewpoints and personalities, and people and lifestyles, and see more of the world through a very geographically limited lens, but from a intellectually expanded viewpoint. And so I feel that it was probably the best thing to keep me rounded and grounded.
Okay. And in terms of what you've learned from acting, you started off very, very young. And how long would you say you've been in acting?
Well, I retired at 25, but I still perform regularly. I still go out and audition. I was semi-retired. I took a good hiatus for probably 10 years, but I mean, you never stop being a performer. So, I would say 43 years, because I'm 43 years old and I was tap dancing in the womb. I was a born performer. I was performing before I ever got my first professional gig. But professionally, if you want to check my union status and my union dues, it's 37 years, quick math in my head.
So in that time frame, what are your best lessons that acting has taught you, which you can share with others?
So it will sound specific to acting, but it's universal to most things in life. A lot of people try to measure talent, and they try to measure talent by the jobs that they book. And one of the things that I learned very early on was that talent is not what gets you a job. Talent is what gets you the audition. And there are so many external factors to how you are a fit to any particular role that are outside of your control. So the only thing that is within your control is you. How do you approach the work? How do you approach the preparation? How do you approach the performance? How do you show up? That is entirely on you. And if you continue to show up, contribute, and contribute unselfishly, you will be recognized and rewarded going on. Your talent will get you the opportunities. Your talent will not secure those opportunities. So as long as you're auditioning, you still have the talent. And this speaks universality into anything, because if you have a skill set that will be continued to serve up to you time and time again, that is your talent, that is your speciality. People will come and they will ask you for this thing. Sometimes we don't recognize what our talent is until late in life. Sometimes we're blessed to learn it early, but it's there, and there are signposts. It's that talent that is giving you the opportunities. Whether you're securing those opportunities or not is outside of your control. If you want to start taking advantage of those opportunities that come your way, the best thing to do is to know what your talent and your skill set are, work on them constantly to improve them, because everyone can get better at what they do. Doesn't matter if you're considered the best in the world. The Usain Bolt still practiced sprinting, though he's the fastest man in the world, and broke his own records a few times. Michael Phelps didn't stop at the first gold medal that he ever won in swimming. We don't, just because you're the best doesn't mean that you can't get better. And 7 point some odd billion people were not the best at any given thing. There's very few people in the world who are the best, and everybody else is in growth and improvement. So if you can focus on what you can control, and that is you, your attitude, how you show up, how you prepare, what you're doing to invest in yourself and your own growth, that will help you secure more opportunities and more opportunities because you will be better prepared than the next person. So control the things that are within your sphere, control the things that are within your influence, and let go of those things that are outside of your control. I have booked roles as an actor because I have blue eyes. I have missed out on opportunities as an actor because I have blue eyes. In fact, I was trying to secure a job last month, and I didn't get it. And it was because they wanted a significantly more diverse selection for the role, and applaud to them, absolutely. And I know the girl who got the role, and you can see that I am neither female, no, although I look great in drag. I do dress up nice if you put a dress on me. But she did a wonderful job of it, and it had nothing to do with talent. We have the same amount of talent, or we wouldn't have had the audition. But casting wanted to take it in a direction, and without a whole bunch of money and surgeries, I cannot replicate what she was able to provide. That ultimately was the right fit for the role, but I still had the talent to audition. So control the things that you can control, and let go of those things that you can't, because they're outside of your influence.
It's a great lesson. It's very stoic. Have you heard of any stoic philosophy at all?
Yes.
That's one of the things that they teach you. And I think it's cool that you learned that from your profession.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, was reinforced when I started to read Toltec wisdom and the Four Agreements. And I went, oh yeah, no, okay. I've found that I've had a lot of lessons in life that I have learned the hard way, and then read some material and I went, oh, I wished I'd known that 15 years ago. That makes so much sense. But the nice thing is that all those lessons have been learned in a way that ingrained them into my soul, because there's something about, when you can have an experience, both positive or negative, that really imprints itself on you. Those lessons are the ones that are hard to forget. And so I'm very grateful that I've learned them internally and intrinsically, as opposed to just reading them and being like, okay, no, that makes sense from a philosophical standpoint. I can say, no, this is practical and universal.
Yeah, it's very easy to read something profound and just go about your day, not taking it on board. So I know exactly what you mean. In terms of biggest wins for your acting career, what springs to mind for you there?
Oh, getting to be shown on the Golden Globes. I did a wonderful project with Dame Helen Mirren, an absolute gem and icon, and William H. Macy, called Door to Door. And Door to Door was based on the real life of a door-to-door salesman for the Watkins Company named Bill Porter. And Bill Macy played Bill Porter and was also a producer on the show. And Dame Helen Mirren played his mother. And I was just in a single scene with them, a scene in a diner where I was making fun of Bill because the real life Bill Porter was one of the top salesmen for the Watkins Company, which was primarily a door-to-door sales thing, very similar to Amway. But he had cerebral palsy. His dad was a top salesman in the Watkins Company, and then he took over, and he, had some of the best sales despite being handed the worst territories when he first started off, and overcoming his perceived disability. He was actually one of the first people to pioneer online sales. He was one of the first people to adapt technology when the internet first became available and sell his products online over the internet. And so it's a fascinating story, absolutely wonderful. It's heartwarming. I strongly encourage anybody to watch it. It's just a feel-good movie. But I played a bully, and I made fun of poor Bill on the day of his first walk about his territory after his first sale, and his mom takes him out to celebrate. And I'm making fun of him for the way that he talks. And I play a very, 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 very mean guy. He's not a nice guy. He's not lovable. Nobody will like me in the show, but they will love the show. And during the Golden Globes, Helen Mirren was nominated for it, and they played the clip at the awards ceremony of the three of us doing our thing. So to have been featured on the Golden Globes was like a super cool thing. And that whole, like, everything about Door to Door, I've been in a lot of projects. If anybody goes through my IMDb Internet Movie Database, for those who don't know what that is on the internet, you can see I've done a lot of shows, and that doesn't show all of the stuff that I've done, because a lot of my stunt work isn't on there. None of my theater work is on there. None of my commercial work is on there. None of my industrial work is on there. It's just strictly movies, and only the movies that have released and have tagged your name. So a lot of my earlier work, like pre 97, isn't on there either. So I've done a lot of stuff, but that one I felt like a movie star. It's the time where I felt like I had arrived, and in my performance, in my craft, in my industry. I was just a day player on it. I think I was technically a principal performer. I had more than 8 lines, but just a single scene. And I had like this massive double wide trailer. Normally I'm stuck in the honey wagons, which is just like this. It's next to the toilet. You've got this little 6x8 room with a little cot and a bathroom to get dressed in. And you just sit there and you try to stay out of the way. I had this double wide trailer with, a lounging couch and like a bathroom that had a tub and a shower. It had the bump outs and like everything. I had a whole bunch of people over partying. And then Bill came in, and he actually played guitar with, he was learning how to play guitar, and he asked if he could play for me and my friends. And I actually have my drum kit with me. So we ended up like having a little jam session in my massive trailer. And, I had my name on the back of my chair, on my set chair. And it was just a really, amazing experience for me to really feel validated as a performer. And it's the highlight of my career.
Thank you for that. What's it like to play a bully?
It's really fun. It's really, I'll be honest, it depends. That one was really fun because it's outside of my normal character. Like, it's a real departure from who I am. So you get to stretch, and as an actor, as a performer, and just, explore things in a safe way of being kind of mean, but at the same time, you're being kind of mean. And sometimes it can feel really bad. I've done 2 true crime reenactment shows, and where I've played not just a bully, but like a genuinely evil and vile human being. Because true crime reenactment tends to be, I played murderers both times, and really, really horrible individuals. And so part of the problem, and then part of the gift of that, is exploring what would cause a person to come to that point, where taking another human being's life was justified. And so that never feels good. Because the better you do at it, the worse you feel. It's kind of this weird dichotomy, and for me, like the one guy was just messed up. And so trying to find any humanity in that, and trying to find a connection and personalize that, was incredibly difficult, and definitely didn't feel as good as getting to play the guy who picked on Bill Porter in a diner.
I understand. It kind of took a strange turn for a moment, that one. But
welcome to a conversation with Tyler Foley, where you never know what you're going to get. I am the ultimate box of chocolates.
You said that you semi-retired. What happened next for you after acting?
I I kind of grown complacent with the craft. I mean, I'd been doing it for 20 years and it had become a job as opposed to a fun thing that I could do where I was still able to earn a living. And then it had become the living as opposed to a living. And it had stopped being fun. So I stepped back from performance and took all of my residuals. You know, the nice thing about performing, particularly if you're unionized, is they take a portion of your pay and put it away in an RRSP. And for those who are not in Canada, that's a registered retired savings plan. I think they're like Roths in the, or what are they in the States? I can't remember what they call them. And I think the UK has a different name for it, but basically a government funded retirement plan. And the union always matches contributions from the producers, and then you have to have matching contributions. So this money grows quite rapidly. And then as a child performer, under legal contract, I had to have a whole bunch of the money put away in trust and my mom being an unbelievably gifted financial mind, instead of putting the trust to be available to me at 18 or 21, it wasn't available to me until 25. And at 25, I still wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. I actually didn't do anything with it until I was about 26, 27. But the decision was to go back to school and get an engineering discipline. I studied geomatics, which for anybody who doesn't know is a fancy word for saying earth study and mapping and surveying. And I specialized in photogrammetry. So anybody who has ever turned on satellite view on Google to make the earth be flat and be able to have straight lines and have pretty pictures that match up to straight lines is actually a remarkably difficult thing to do because the earth is curved, despite what 0.0001% of the world believes. It does have curvature. I know, I've measured it, and it's a pain to make that thing flat, but that was my job. And so I was able to make the pretty photo pictures and photo maps of the earth. And from that, I started my own company. Unfortunately, that company failed within about 4 years of me starting, 2008 to 2012. So 4 years, 3.5. And that kind of took the wind out of my sails for a little bit, because I had thought that was going to be the plan, and ended up getting into this safety thing based on all the training that I had to do for the photogrammetric company, because primary client for geographic information like that is the government. And it doesn't matter what government you're working for. They want you to have safety systems in place for you to be a contractor working for them or working with them or subcontracting out to them. And so I needed to get all this safety training. And then I didn't have a company, but I still had the training. And a friend of mine who runs an electrical company, and not producing the electricity, but wiring residential homes, multi-unit residential and commercial, had said, I need a safety officer for this big project that we're doing. And you have most of the training. If I upgrade these couple of courses that you need to get this fancy designation, will you come be my safety manager? And I said, sure. And that, introduced me to this realm of safety back in 2012. And then when that project was done, I still had all the training. And then I was free to put up my own shingle and start my own company. And so I've been doing my own thing, running my own company, Total Buy-In, ever since. And I say semi-retired because I can't say that I don't act anymore. Because once my daughter was born, I was like, oh my goodness, this child is cute. Objectively, I know that all parents think that their children are beautiful, and I am no different. But I had external validation of that because my agent, who specializes in children and child actors, had said, she's really gorgeous. And if Sylvie says that, you know that your kid is definitely photogenic. And so my daughter got her first job in performance at 11 months old. And the thing is when they're that young, they need somebody to show up with them. And they're like, oh, the dad? Because at that point, you're no longer Tyler, you're the dad. This is Mackenzie, and the dad. Oh, the dad performs? And Sylvie would say, yeah, no. And then now her agent Roxanne here in Calgary goes, yeah, me. So now they submit us both, so Mackenzie gets submitted, and then her dad can also perform. And so now I show up and I'm Mackenzie's father on set, and that's an absolute thrill and a joy for me. So I still perform every once in a while, and sometimes I get things outside of Kenzie. I do my own thing every once in a while, and it's a fun thing. But at this point, it's back to being fun because I don't need it for income. It's play money. Any of the money that I get from acting goes into a fund where I can use it for vacations or buying, the weird, silly toys that I want. I most recently purchased goalie gear because I'm Canadian. So ice hockey is in my veins, and I'm even weirder. I like to goaltend. And so goalie equipment, by the way, is not cheap. I dare anybody to look into what the expensive new pads are and understand that it's a sacrifice that I'm willing to make.
Well, you mentioned the failure of the company. I speak to many people who have gone through that same experience. The question is, what lessons did you take away from that?
Oh, it's not that I necessarily took lessons away, but I had lessons reinforced that despite all your preparation, you can't prepare for everything. Again, life happens for you, not to you. And it's really hard to see the divinity of events at the time that they're unfolding. And oftentimes you need the luxury of hindsight. So the key is to get through it initially. Sometimes you do need to do that survival mode before you can start the rebuild. And I definitely needed, a bit of a reset after that because I'd put everything into it. Not only had I sacrificed years of my life into school to train to put together that job, I had also put in, sweat equity and real equity. I put all of the money that I had on the planet into getting that company up and going. More specifically, revitalizing a company that was already there. I entered in a relationship with my business partner, and she had been running the company, I think, for 10 or 12 years at that point. But it was fizzling out. And my uncle was very well respected authority within the space. And so my name kind of had a little bit of clout. And I had worked for him when I was much younger in his firm doing, very not necessarily technical work because I hadn't gone back to school yet. I was doing very simplistic things to help out at his firm. And so I was able to enter into this relationship. And unfortunately, near the end of the company, me and my business partner had a falling out, a differing of opinion on how to do things. And that falling out never did get resolved because she passed away suddenly. And literally out of the blue, she wasn't feeling good on a Friday, went into the hospital, and we'd lost her by the Sunday. But, I didn't have the right director's insurance in place. I certainly couldn't take on I didn't have anything left to leverage to take on what we needed to get for me to take over the business. It wasn't even really an option. And so, literally over a weekend, it all disappeared. And those are things, again, I don't care what prep you could have put in. You can't prepare for the death of a business partner. And ironically, I had learned that lesson very early in my life at 6 years old because my father passed away starting a business venture with my godfather, putting together a restaurant. And they hadn't even had it open 10 days and my father passed away. And I had to watch my aunt and my uncle Brad, try to keep that legacy going for about a year and a bit before they had to close it down. And now all that remains is a couple of logoed t-shirts that say suspenders. and that is all that is left of that restaurant. So, those lessons come over and over and over again, I suppose, until you learn them. But that was the big one, that um, you don't always necessarily see the grace in something until you have the luxury of hindsight. And as prepared as you want to be, you can never be prepared for everything. But again, it becomes that internal focus of a focus on what you can control, as opposed to what you can't. I could do nothing about my business partner passing, um, or the fact that I couldn't continue on with the business without her. But I could control kind of my next steps and how I approached it. And again, the phoenix from those ashes was, I had the safety training. So what do you do with it? Or do I continue going on with the photogrammetry, which is funny because I ultimately ended up blending the two. My next consulting gig for a year was with a survey firm that specialized in mobile mapping. And that was what we were pivoting to at InView, was very specialized interior mobile mapping. And the company that I went to after working for my friend, they specialized in exterior mobile mapping, which is very similar and more traditional. And so I was able to be their safety consultant, as well as do more than just safety, and actually do data processing and extraction of geographic information for them, and really serve their clients well. And then develop this skill set of speaking. That's where I first realized that I could really help people effectively with presentations, because the president and CEO, who are both incredibly brilliant and very articulate, would make me do all of the presentations. And I was like, well, why don't you guys do this? They're like, oh, no, we don't do that. I'm like, well, but you could. You're really smart. You could do this. Let's just tweak it. And so they were literally both my second safety clients and my first public speaking clients. And from there, it's grown. So it's again, hindsight is a remarkably straight path when you look from the present into the past. But if you were to ask 6-year-old me what I was going to be at 43, I think I would have been a pilot or an astronaut. And it was a very circuitous and winding road to get to where I am now. But looking back on it, it's a straight shot. Like, obviously, this is where I landed.
Do you remember a first speaking gig at all? Is there one that stands out as being like, this was the main one for me, that was the first one?
Well, I have a lot of first. So there's the first time ever on stage, right? Which technically would have been my first speaking gig. And that was 6. I remember the first time I won a speech competition. It was a festival here called the Kiwanis Festival, for spoken word. And I read a poem called The Dragon. I think I was 8 years old. And my teacher, who wasn't actually even my teacher, she was like the general art teacher. So she did like the plays and stuff. But I never actually had her as a teacher in elementary school. But she taught me music, and she directed the plays. Basically handed me a poem one day. I was like 3rd grade, and she said, "I want you to memorize this." I said, "Okay." So I did, because I'm used to that. That was not an odd occurrence for me at 8. I've been doing that for like a couple of years now. That was easy. And she said, "I want you to memorize this poem," and she had registered me in the Kiwanis Festival. And I went and I delivered it, and I won first place, and then got to compete provincially with it. And I think I placed 3rd or 4th provincially. And so that was kind of my first time really just using spoken word without kind of like props and staging and other actors or performers. It was the first time I was just on my own on stage. And I remember the first time I ever got stage fright at 14, delivering a Remembrance Day recital of Flanders Fields, and absolutely freezing up and being terrified by it. I remember the first time I did kind of like a self-development workshop where I was the presenter and I was helping other people find transformation and be the catalyst of change in their life. And I remember thinking, wow, this is a remarkably heavy responsibility. I remember the first time I had my big stage, like where I was on with other people who are names, you know, Les Brown and Phil Town and Tony Robbins. And when I got to be on the roster with people like that, and the feeling of coming out into a stadium, you know, 6,000 to 7,000 people, and the big stage and the lights and the sound and your own mic and an MC introducing you. All of those are highlights along the way.
Well, I kind of feel like that's a whole nother topic. I kind of, you can't name drop Les Brown and Tony Robbins without me wanting to ask questions about that. But I have to make a decision about. I want to ask you what's next. So, what's in Tyler Foley's future?
Continuing on with that. So, I very closely aligned with a group here out of Canada called the Power of Success, and their Power Within down in the States, and putting on workshops and seminars with them, and you know, being on their not a headliner, but definitely one of the people on the bill for their day long presentations. We're putting together an event in Cancun at Planet Hollywood in this spring break of 2023. So that is going to be a really fun event. That's 7 days, a lot of big names that are going to be there. That I even get to be involved with it is still surreal. And the Power of Success is helping me put on my own program. So 3 days in Las Vegas with the Power to Speak Naked and the Power of Influence. And that's going to be really, really fun, where we're going to have 200 to 300 people who are going to come and learn from me and Bo Eason and a couple of other surprise guests on how to really show up powerfully on stage and tell your story, and tell it in an effective way, tell it in a way that can impact an audience and provide change. And really, again, you know, some people don't discover what their talent is until late in life. We want to help people discover what their story is, even if they don't feel that they have a story, because everybody has a story. And then continue to push the book. So, you know, I've got the best-selling book, The Power to Speak Naked. We have a new edition of it, the revised edition, bigger, longer, and uncut, is coming out in the beginning of 2023. So I'm really, really, really excited about that. I have another book that's launching with the founder of Podmatch, Alex Sanfilippo, and it's called Podmatch Guest Mastery. And so I've co-authored that with a couple of other of the top influencers and guests on the Podmatch platform, teaching other people how to really, really effectively use the platform to get their message out, and how I've managed to use it to be in the top 10 ranked guests on the platform for the last 19 months. And who knows what the future will look like. I very seldomly am out of the top 1 or 2 spot. And even when I am, it's only briefly. So technically, over aggregate, I'm actually the number 1 ranked guest on the Podmatch platform over the last year and a half. So showing other people the power of their story, and showing people the various options to them to get the story out there is kind of the focus of the next 12 months and what's next, whether that's the platinum event in Cancun, or my event in Las Vegas, or these various book launches, or just things like what you and I are getting to do today, Thomas, and having a conversation. That's kind of the focus of what's next.
Thank you for that. I definitely feel like you're an authority on the podcast guesting. So I have seen you being in the charts, even though we hadn't connected yet. But if people do want to connect with you or buy the book, where do they go?
Best place to go is my website, and I'm sure we'll post that in the show notes so they can do a quick scroll down to find that. But if they're going to hit pause and scroll before they do, I would ask one favor, Thomas, and that is that they're already listening to your platform. So if they haven't yet done so, if they could hit pause and give you a 5-star review, because I know how hard it is to put on a show. There's a reason why I'm on the guest mastery side of the book and not on the host mastery side, because it's exhausting being a host. And it's so much easier on this side being a guest and just getting to show up and the work that you do. And I don't think a lot of listeners really understand anyways, the amount of effort that goes into putting on a podcast and regularly contributing content out to the world. So they already listen to you, and they're listening to you for a reason. So I would love for them to share with you what that reason is. And the best gift they can give themselves is to give you a 5-star rating with a very detailed description of what it is that they enjoy about your show, what maybe one of their favorite episodes was, what was a favorite guest, what do they like about the content that you're bringing, because that will help you be informed on what content is resonating with your audience so that you can bring more people on like that. It only benefits the listener. So if you're listening to this right now, please, please, please give Thomas a 5-star review and say why. And if you're willing to do that, because you already hit pause, so you're already there. So give the 5-star review, scroll down to the show notes, and you will see SeanTylerFoley.com. Sean is spelled the proper Irish way, SeanTylerFoley.com. If you come over to the website, it would be my gift to you as a thank you for giving Thomas a 5-star review to give you a free PDF download of The Power to Speak Naked, my #1 best-selling book. We'll also give you free access to my Drop the Mic Trainer program. It's a video series that I put together, very quick, 7 videos, doesn't take very long to get through, with some very actionable steps to make you a better presenter, a better public speaker. We're going to give you access to that for free. Plus, invite you to my Facebook group, Endless Stages, where I go live every Tuesday at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern time, to give a 20-minute live training on whatever happens to be the hot topic of the week out of the group. And so we do that training every Tuesday. All of those are my gifts to your listeners, Thomas, but only if they're willing to give you a 5-star review. No 5-star review, no gifts for you.
Well, in 265 episodes, that's a first. So, class act. Thank you, Tyler, very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity to come on and share with your audience and have this wonderful conversation. Truly, if you weren't doing what you would do, I would have no platform to share my message. So thank you for what you do, and thank you for having me as a guest on.
Well, I enjoyed listening to your story. Tyler Foley, thank you very much.